All right, today we're playing detective. We're going to try and crack the code of schizophrenia. For decades, researchers have been piecing together clues, from our genes, from our environment, all over the place. We're going to follow that trail of evidence, using the findings from the Epidemiology of Schizophrenia as our guide.
So let's just jump right into the central mystery that really drives all this research. What in the world actually causes schizophrenia? I mean, for a very long time, the answer was a complete black box, making it one of the most complex puzzles in all of modern medicine.
And that big mystery immediately brings us to a debate that you've probably heard a million times: nature versus nurture. Is schizophrenia something that's just hardwired into our genetic blueprint from day one? Or is it triggered by the world around us, our experiences and our surroundings? This is the core tension we're going to try to unravel today.
Now, to crack a case like this, you need the right tool. And for us, that tool is epidemiology. You can basically think of it as the detective work of public health. Epidemiologists are the investigators, and they sift through massive amounts of data from entire populations, all to find patterns, spot risk factors, and ultimately uncover the hidden causes of a disease.
Okay, so let's start our investigation with the first batch of clues, the environmental ones. This is the world of social epidemiology, where we look for answers not deep inside our bodies, but out in the world all around us.
So what do the epidemiologists find? Well, it turns out our social and physical environment can have a huge influence on the risk of developing schizophrenia. And it's not random at all. They found clear patterns related to things like, say, growing up in a big city versus the countryside, or even the time of year you were born.
And the impact of some of these factors can be, pretty profound. For instance, studies found that a child's risk could increase by a staggering 6.2 times if their mother went through the severe stress of losing a spouse during pregnancy. It just goes to show how deeply our very earliest experiences can shape our health way down the road.
And that's really just one piece of the puzzle. This table lays out a whole range of these environmental risk factors. You see things like urban birth, which might be tied to stuff like pollution or social stress. Then there's prenatal famine, which points to just how critical nutrition is for a developing brain. And winter birth, well, that could be a stand-in for maternal infections that are just more common in colder months. Every single one of these adds another detail to the picture, highlighting just how crucial our early environment really is.
But here's the thing. The environment is only half the story. So now let's pivot to the second set of clues, the ones hidden inside our genetic code. Welcome to the world of genetic epidemiology.
The idea that schizophrenia might be inherited isn't new at all. For a long time, people have observed that the disorder seems to run in families, and decades of what you'd call classical research, studying families, twins, adoptees, have given us really powerful, consistent evidence that there is a strong genetic component at play here.
So just how strong is that genetic link? This is where a concept called heritability comes in. It's basically a measure of how much of the difference in people's risk for something across a whole population is because of their genes. And for schizophrenia, even conservative estimates put that number at over 60%. So the bottom line is, a big majority of the risk seems to be linked to our genetics.
Okay, hold on. We have really strong evidence for environmental factors, and we have equally strong evidence for genetic ones. It kind of feels like we have two different culprits, right? But the real breakthrough, the aha moment, happens when we start to ask, what if they're working together? So here they are, our two sets of clues, side by side. On one side, you've got genetic stuff, like family history and high heritability. On the other, you've got environmental factors, like where you were born and prenatal stress. The key insight, the thing that changes everything, is realizing these are not separate issues. The real answer is in how they connect.
And this, right here, is the solution to that whole nature versus nurture debate. The evidence is just overwhelming. Schizophrenia isn't caused by just one or the other. It pops up from a really complex interaction between a person's genetic predispositions and the environmental stuff they're exposed to.
And look, this interaction isn't just some vague idea. Researchers have actually identified specific ways this happens. So for example, one way is that an environmental factor, maybe an infection, could literally switch on a gene that was lying dormant. Or another way is that someone's genetic makeup might just make them more sensitive to stressful environments in the first place. These are real, distinct paths that show just how deeply intertwined these two forces are.
Look, understanding the cause is a huge achievement. But the investigation doesn't stop there. The most important question is, what's next? What do we do with this knowledge? How does it actually help us find a new path forward?
Yeah, let's make this real. How does understanding this complicated gene-environment dance actually translate into real-world benefits for people, for society?
Well, one of the most direct applications is in planning health services. Think about it. If we know a community has a higher concentration of risk factors, say high rates of poverty and not so great prenatal care, health systems can proactively send resources there. It allows them to bridge the gap between what a population really needs and the support that's actually available. It's a truly evidence-based approach to mental health care.
And this brings us to what is, I think, the most hopeful conclusion of all. The prevention of schizophrenia is, and this is a quote, not an impossible dream. This knowledge completely shifts our focus from just treating a disorder to maybe, just maybe, preventing it from ever happening in the first place.
For example, we know that complications during pregnancy and birth are risk factors. So, by putting universal interventions in place, like improving prenatal care for every single expectant mother, we can help shield the developing brain. This could potentially lower the number of new cases of schizophrenia. And the best part? These same interventions also help prevent a whole bunch of other health issues. So it's a win-win for public health across the board.
So the ultimate takeaway from this whole detective story is actually a really optimistic one, and it leaves us with a final powerful question. If we can truly understand the risks, both the ones in our genes and the ones in our environment, can we actually rewrite the outcome? The evidence suggests that by keeping on unraveling this complex dance, we might just be able to not only predict the future, but actively build a healthier one. Thanks so much for joining me.